And I will proceed to call this meeting to order. The Tuesday, May 12th, 2020 Zoning and Design Review Board first ever remote Zoom teleconference meeting. And I'll proceed with the roll call, please.
Okay, Chair Zagorczyk.
Here.
Vice Chair Miller.
Here.
Member Cook.
Here.
Member Pina. Member Pina, you might be muted.
Daniel, I don't see her here anymore.
Oh, she's dropped from our list. Okay. Well,
Will there be an
I suggest
opportunity
we give her a minute to come back. Yeah, she has dropped from the list.
Is there any way to reach her, or does she know she's dropped, perhaps?
I'm sending her an email right now. If anyone has her phone number, I would encourage them to reach out to her that way.
Sandra, would there be an opportunity to continue with Pledge of Allegiance, the adoption of the agenda, and then move forward and invite her back in at a later time?
Members who are present, and hopefully members Pina and Jordan will join us, and that it's just a temporary technical difficulty that they're having. We are expecting their attendance.
Jordan is here, and I have just texted Lynn.
Thank you.
I think maybe wait a few more seconds. Maybe complete the roll call and then welcome Member Pina when she arrives back.
Okay. And Member Jordan.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed with the pledge before moving on to the agenda. See if we can do this all together now. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice
for all.
Does anyone have anything they want to add to the current agenda as it's written?
No.
No.
Given, I will ask if someone wants to make a motion to adopt the agenda as is.
So moved.
Second?
And I'll second.
Be noted that the agenda is adopted as written. Has staff received any public comment on items not on the agenda?
We have not.
Okay. Well, with that, then we'll proceed with the first item, and I'll pass it on to staff.
Okay. Good evening, ZDRB. Thank you for joining our first ever Zoom. I will also be monitoring to check if member Pina does join, so forgive me if I'm slightly distracted right now. The first item for your review tonight is a new single-family residence proposed at 6638 Yount Street. The applicant is seeking to build a 2,990 square foot single-family residence, 748 square foot detached ADU, and a 528 square foot detached garage on their 14,233 square foot parcel. After taking into account, next slide, please. After taking into account exemptions, the FAR for the proposed project is 0.233, which is below the maximum allowed 0.25. Next slide, please. The dimensions of the house comply with the municipal code. One-story portions of the home do not exceed 20 feet, and two-story portions of the home do not exceed 28 feet. Next slide, please. And next slide, please. The two-car garage and the ADU are located on the rear half of the parcel. The garage doors are consistent with the preference. Oh, sorry. Next slide, please. The garage doors are consistent with the preference for single doors and also comply with the maximum permitted width of 12 feet per door. They are 11 feet per door. The garage doesn't encroach on the creek setback as this property is situated next to Hopper Creek. And it doesn't encroach on the rear property line setback either. Its placement at the rear of the parcel is effective in reducing its overall visual impact on the design. I do have to make one quick correction to the staff report. In the staff report, it stated that the driveway would be made of asphalt. This is not correct. The applicant proposes permeable pavers for the driveway. Next slide, please. The exterior of the home is primarily wood shake siding, which is an approved exterior material. The style of the home is contemporary craftsman with Victorian influences. The design is compatible with the vernacular style of homes in this area of town, which is near the Old Town Historic District. For colors, the rendering shows a neutral yellow with warm off-white trim.
Daniel?
Yes.
Yes. I just got a text from Lynn, and she's asking me to ask you to let her in.
Oh, thank you for noting that. Yes, I see her now in the waiting room. I'm allowing her in.
All right. Would you like to roll call Lynn as present?
Yes. So member Pina, are you present?
I am present. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So this style of design is compatible with the vernacular style of homes in this area of town, which is in sort of a transitionary area near the Old Town Historic District. For colors, the rendering shows a neutral yellow with warm off-white trim, and these colors are compatible with the adjacent Old Town and nearby residential districts, as well as the preference for a soft palette of colors. The front porch, as you can see, is a significant design element at 360 square feet. This exceeds the requirement for a front porch of at least 72 square feet. And the front porch theme is also continued behind to the ADU, which has a 57 square foot porch of similar styling. The project has parking that meets the town's requirements, which are to provide one covered and one screened parking space that are independently accessible. As proposed, the residents would have two which are covered in the garage, and one which is situated to the right of the garage that is screened. The project adheres to all setback requirements. It's situated along Hopper Creek to the right of this rendering. You can see that tree, which is part of a grove of trees that is along the creek setback. No building is proposed within the creek setback, and so that complies with the requirements. Next slide, please. And finally, this is the draft landscaping plan. It includes a variety of shrubs, flowers, and trees that are native or drought tolerant, including Mexican bush sage, Santa Barbara daisy, and fruitless olive trees. However, this landscaping is more provided for context right now, as a final landscaping plan will come back before the board for approval at a later date. At this point, I'll turn it over to the board for discussion, but I will also admit the applicants from the waiting room.
All right, thank you. While that the applicants are admitted from the waiting room, are there any questions of staff on the proposal? Maybe we can, since we're doing this remotely, I'll start with Stephen, Chairperson Miller, or Vice Chair Miller, rather. Any questions of staff on the proposal? You are muted.
Sorry, not at the moment.
Member Cook, any questions from staff?
Of course. Daniel, you said there was a 200 square foot allowance for the garage towards the FAR. Can you explain that?
That's correct. So any garage that is proposed for a new residence, 200 square feet of the overall floor space from that garage is not counted. So essentially you can build a 200 square foot garage and it won't count at all, but anything beyond that then is added to the overall floor area ratio.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, I note that the pitch of the roof is recommended at 412 and the top floor garage and ADU of this are all 612. Is that something that you commonly grant allowances for, changing to a 612?
Yeah, yes, actually, that is a good thing, essentially, having a steeper pitch of that roof. So 412 is the minimum we want, but a 612 is steeper than that, and so that is encouraged.
Okay, so we will be requiring a landscape plan, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and I note that in your notes, you noted where the HVAC units will be. I assume they will be placed on a drawing somewhere, and they are in the correct
Yeah. So that will be that is noted in the staff report, the proposed locations, but we will require them to come back for verification once they have finalized those locations. But right now they are proposed for the northeast corner of the property, and that one will be for the main residence. It will be screened with both a wood structure and landscaping, and the HVAC for the ADU will be placed between the ADU and the garage, and that will be screened with a wooden structure.
Okay. And last question, the storm drain report meets all necessary requirements, since I can't really read a storm drain report properly?
Yes, it does. I've been informed by our public works crew, staff, that it does.
Okay. Those are my questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cook. Member Pina, any questions for staff?
Yes, I was segueing off of the HVAC as well, and trying to determine exactly where I walked the property, and the setback between the neighbors and this property is fairly small. And so concerned about the size of the HVAC, and I'm assuming that perhaps the owners or the representative will talk to us about that tonight, just because of the noise level.
Yes, I believe the architect is on the line, as well as the owners, so I hope that they can speak to that. Let me just see if they're available for comment.
Perhaps I can take this.
Hi, is that Tammy?
That is, I'm here with you.
Sorry.
We've got an echo, I apologize. I'm here with my husband, thank you. So I appreciate everyone's time. But
Thank you for joining us.
Architect's been working closely with us on the design, so it's probably most appropriate for Ivan to talk about that.
And is he on the line with you? Because I didn't see him as a separate person in the waiting room.
Okay, look, it's a great question. I don't know, quite honestly, in the plans exactly. I can't answer the questions precisely. And so if there's a follow-up mechanism, we can certainly come back on that plan again. I think obviously our plan is not to create issues with our neighbors and to try to be responsible on that, but I don't know the exact, I can't give you an exact answer.
Of course.
Thank you.
And it looks like Ivan is not in the waiting room. So
apologies for that. I thought he'd be on. So obviously we wanted to also hear just to understand just any concerns from the community. So we appreciate that.
All right, thank you. I want to make sure we go around the table for any other questions from staff. So Member Jordan, any questions of staff on the plan and proposal?
Were there any floodplain issues with the location of this house being so close to the creek?
No, the only floodplain issues are to maintain the creek setback, which is to not build within 10 feet of the top of bank, and they have complied with that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Jordan. And I just have one question, more for my education. For the ADU, are there parking requirements for an ADU?
No, there are no parking requirements for an ADU.
Okay. Thank you very much. So if there's no more questions from staff, it sounds like we do have the applicant available. Are there any, does the applicant, the Keeleys, want to make any additional comments, things that haven't been covered in the report, anything they wanted to surface or raise?
No, I just say, look, we have been huge fans of Yountville, and hopefully folks can appreciate. We want to maintain the quaintness of the community. We love the community. We've actually been in the community for a long time. This is the residence that we intend to retire to with our son who's autistic, which was the ADU intention. Just again, I'll share that. And we really love the community and want to be responsible. Again, we appreciate all of your time and attention to details. And again, are certainly here. We want to be responsive and and help add to the community, not certainly do anything that people feel is the adorable quaintness of Yountville.
Thank you for sharing that. Are there any questions from the board for the applicants themselves? I'm guessing no, but if anyone wants to jump in, please do.
Are you going to go?
Did you have a comment? Yeah.
Around the table, Michael?
I could go around the table. I was assuming there wouldn't be, but I'm going to start in the same order that I did. Vice Chair Miller, are there any questions of the applicant? I'm going to assume you're mutedly telling us no. Member Cook, would you direct any questions you have to the applicant?
Yes, I do have a few questions. I'm not sure. Some of them might be applicant, some of them might be architect. I thought he would be here. As far as the placement of the garage, I understand the Yountville request that it not be at the front of the property, and that makes perfect sense. But I just wanted to make sure that the applicant, the owners wanted it to be all the way to the back, because I could see it being further forward so that they have more backyard, perhaps.
Yeah, look, I think we obviously have been and have hired all the experts to try to make sure we're within all of the requisite codes here. We're comfortable with it being towards the back. I think that's fine from our perspective. And so, again, we've been working with a number of experts on trying to meet the standards of the community. And I appreciate, Kimberly, you're asking the question, but we're okay with the placement. I guess if that's the short answer. If there is question about why we've chosen that, again, that's I've always grown up in homes that, we grew up on the peninsula where we had what used to be the old horse stables, which were garages on the back of the properties. And so I'm I'm kind of that's an affinity of mine. But in any event, there's any issues from a planning perspective, we'd be happy to discuss them and what have you.
No, I think that was just my question, making sure it was your choice to have it back that far.
And I would just like to add, I think that we have Ivan with us now, the architect. I believe he has joined us.
So does it maybe make sense to redirect some of the HVAC questions to Ivan? I mean, unfortunately, those are the ones I don't feel properly skilled to answer. So.
Yes, I would encourage our ZDRB members to ask those questions now that we have him on the line.
Okay. Since the rest of mine might be better answered by him, I'll just continue, and if that's okay.
It's okay. Please continue.
Okay. The drop in elevation that you currently see on the property from the sidewalk, the property goes down and then it's flat. Will the existing drop remain, or is it going to be raised up? Is he muted?
He might.
Can you hear me now?
He is not.
There we go.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that. We will maintain pretty much the natural grade. We do have a civil grading plan on there that shows the elevations, the grade elevations. So yes, it will step down. There are some mature trees along the creek side that we want to maintain, and the grade is just going to more or less follow natural grade.
I was just worried about the house being raised up too much in comparison to the neighboring houses. Sometimes with extra high sill height.
It will not be. We're pretty much meeting the height elevation or the height restrictions.
Okay. Right now, those were all the questions I had for the applicant and the architect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cook. And I'll pass it on to Member Pena, who had questions for the architect about the placement of HVAC and size, I believe.
Yes, I did. First of all, I want to tell you it's a lovely design, and I like what you've done overall with the property. We walked it, and now I can get a visual of it as well. And I want to compliment you on the design and architectural style with this. My only question is where the HVACs are going to be placed for the main house, and how large will the HVAC be? And the concern I have with that is how close is it going to be to the fence, where you have neighbors right adjacent to the opposite sides of the fence?
What we have for the main house, it's going to be a condenser air conditioning unit. The main unit, heating unit, is going to be inside the building. We don't have the exact size of the condensing unit. They're approximately 2.5 to 3 feet wide and the same height. As far as the location, it should be approximately 10 to 12 feet away from the property line. It would be toward the back of the house.
And when you say it's enclosed in a building, do you just mean that you have a surrounding something like?
We have a mechanical room for the main heating unit, the furnace itself. There's a space inside the building for the water heater and the furnace. Again, the condensing unit is going to be outside for the air conditioning purposes.
Correct. All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
All right. Thank you. And Member Jordan, any questions for the applicant or architect?
No, thank you. No questions for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I myself don't have any questions. I will conclude our question period for the applicants and architect, and I'll open.
I believe there's one more question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
From Member Cook.
Oh.
And Stephen was raising his hand, so he can go first.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you on there, Stephen. Member.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself when it was my turn, so you guys couldn't hear me. But you can hear me now.
We can, yes.
Okay. My question is regarding, my training is as an interior architect, and so my questions are always like imagining myself inside the home, and I'm looking at this, and the second floor window fenestration makes me think about, I have the exact same exposure at my house, which is 1 block west of this house. And I'm just thinking about how extremely sunny and hot that west side gets. And just wondering if the applicant has addressed that, and also addressing the concerns of being able to put window treatments in those types of windows where they have such tight corners.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to address that. Thank you, Stephen, and appreciate, look forward to being your neighbor, by the way.
Thank you.
So look, actually where we live right now, our home right now is in San Mateo Park on the peninsula, and we have lots of light and sunlight, and we are no strangers to good window treatments. Quite frankly, though, we also love the view of the creek and the natural light that comes with it. But we absolutely will be looking to very good window treatment coverings because we can appreciate the heat that emanates from that exposure. So I appreciate the heads up too. So
this is what it's like right here.
You look beautifully illuminated.
Good to
Stephen.
know.
Thank you. And Member Cook, follow-up question.
Yeah, I agree with Member Pena that it's a beautiful choice of a design. I think it fits really well into Yountville, and it has a charmingness about it. I just, design-wise, have a problem with the stairwell kind of turret look that it has. To me, it isn't reflective of Craftsman or Farmhouse, and it adds a lot of massing being so tall. And I don't know if I could save that for comments, but I thought I would say it while the applicant is there just to get their input.
I'm happy to comment, and Ivan, you certainly can. Look, I think the inspiration we were looking for, given a lot of the other properties in Yountville, was, I'd say, a little bit less Craftsman, a little bit more Victorian. Quite frankly, we were trying to work within the confines of the height requirements because obviously turrets, I'd love this to be a classic Queen Anne turret, but obviously those don't work well within the confines of the Yountville restrictions, which we respect. And so that was really, now I'd say, look, we've got the rendering done. The idea here was to also obviously add accoutrements that make this look, I'd say, even more quaint, a bit more on the Victorian side. But again, we really have been mindful of the constraints of the Yountville requirements here. And so I think as much as I love the rendering, the idea here as well is to also add Victorian accents to give it some more charm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for the applicants or architect from the board? If there are no other questions, I will open it up to any public comment. Don't know if we have any members of the public participating. Staff?
We don't, and we have received no further public comment on this item.
Okay, great. So I will close public comment, and we'll now pass it back onto the board members to make any further comments or share any perspectives amongst ourselves. We'll do it in the same order that I did before, just to kind of keep things organized. Vice Chair Miller, any other commentary, observations, perspectives you wanted to share with the board?
The only observation that I would make is that there's very little precedent for Victorian as a vernacular in Yountville, and so it's a cause or reason for pause on my part. It's much more akin to things that you would see up valley, and in areas that were developed in a more affluent area previously, or affluent during that era, during Victorianism. So that's my only comment. It makes me a little nervous that there would be little decorative bits added to this, because I think I really like the way that it looks now, and I think it fits really well within the context of that neighborhood.
And to be really clear, Stephen, this is the design, so you're not going to see anything, obviously, but just to give you an example, and I think you'll appreciate that. I mean, again, we walk the neighborhoods. I know Yountville. We love Yountville.
Okay.
But for example, if you look at the porch, on the post in the porch, perhaps some little accents on the porch.
So I will ask.
Right? So on the top of the porch, things like that just give it a little bit more charm. I mean, that's the idea. I mean, look, you can't do Victorian in Yountville given the standards here, and that's not I say that it's just more for some more charm accents, rather. Maybe Victorian isn't the right word, but it's really to try to be aligned with the charm of the town.
So I will point out that even though
details on a lot of the houses and look, I think, we'd love to add some of that detail to this house too. Again, we love the community. We are not we want to blend, not stand out, obviously.
So I want to just strike a quick balance between the decorum and the due process but we are on a video conference. So I would say at this point, if there is a question specifically for the applicant, we should adhere to that. Otherwise, my understanding is that we're now in the phase of discussing amongst the board specifically. So I would say anybody from the board, if they have a question for the applicant, then it would be best to unmute, and then we can ensue on the discussion. I just want to be clear that that portion of the meeting has moved on. This is purely now for the board members to talk amongst themselves. That isn't to say that questions can't be directed to the applicant. I just want to be clear. So Stephen, since we have engaged, did you have anything you wanted to follow up on?
No,
Okay.
I think I think the design as it is very nice. One of the things that I would hate to see is decorative elements added to the curly cues added between the columns or something like that, because I don't think that they are part of the Yountville aesthetic or the vernacular here. But I think I understand what the applicant is saying. Clearly, when you move into a house, there's all kinds of elements that get added, including the bicycles in the driveway and all the other stuff. So I think I have a clear understanding of what she's saying and what she's after.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll pass on to Member Cook. And as a reminder, this is where the board is communicating amongst themselves. If there's a follow-up question for the applicant, then we should unmute the applicant and we can engage. But otherwise, we're saving our commentary for ourselves. Member Cook.
Thank you. I agree with Stephen. I like the farmhouse design, with the exception of the turret, which I do not care for. But I like the farmhouse design that we're approving today, and I also would not want to see Victorian accessories, decorative accessories added to, eaves and things like that. So I think if we're approving this design, it would be this design. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cook. Member Pina, any comment for the board?
No further comments.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Member Jordan.
Yes, I'd like to say overall, I like this design a lot. I think that this lot and this home will be very visible from the walkway on the south side of the creek. So the whole thing is going to be exposed to anybody walking on that side. And although the turret is different, it sends the building back in time a little bit and it sort of dates it, which I like, because it's easy to do generic craftsman and you don't really get much from it. It's just another one of those. But also I like to add the fact the placement of the garage, I think, is really smart because it helps to shield the ADU and add a little privacy. And as I said before, there's going to be a lot of exposure of this lot from people walking on that walkway. So that kind of passive shielding and privacy, I think, is really a smart move. So all in all, I think they did a nice job. For as big as this home is, it just seemed very sympathetic for the neighborhood.
Thank you, Member Jordan. I'll wrap things up with a final commentary before we move on to make a motion. I echo my fellow members' observations about the integration of the design into the neighborhood, and I really It's always appreciated that while we do have a formal process here, that we're able to engage with the applicant. And we're all people, we're all neighbors, and we're looking out for the best for the town, for each other. The fact that steps were taken to make the house feel both unique and integrate well is always appreciated, I think, for anybody visiting or living in the town. And I would also comment that anybody who's walking north along Yount Street would see a lot of those design elements echoed. So it creates a nice continuity for an architectural style that was introduced, I think, about 15 years ago on Landy Way. I think my comment observation on the turret is I think that this particular angle that we're looking at gives it a degree of prominence that it probably won't necessarily have throughout the design. In particular, we're looking at the house from a unrealistically elevated position, probably about 25 feet up. So again, not necessarily the perspective that somebody on foot would actually see. So I think while you could make the case that it juts in a way that makes it disproportionate, I suspect that that's only a function of how it's been rendered for us in this particular way. But overall, it's great to see the progress and how much attention to detail has been placed in it. So thank you very much. I will now pass it on to any member if they would like to make a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion.
Please go ahead.
I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve these plans as shown and described to the board. And do I need to add anything to that, Michael?
No, I believe that is good. Does anyone want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
And at this point, if everybody could unmute themselves, or I think we said we're going to do it one at a time. So if we would take a vote on the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Sorry, if I could just interject on a process point really quick.
Yes, we'll have to do it one at a time, right?
Yes, Chair. If you wanted to just ask for a roll call vote, at that point, I'll ask everyone what their vote is.
Yes, but you can't change your vote based on what someone else did. So you have to imagine it's happening simultaneously, due to the process. So you picture your vote. I'm going to go one at a time. Vice Chair Miller?
Aye.
Member Cook?
No.
Member Pena?
Aye.
Member Jordan?
Aye.
And I will also vote aye. Let it be noted that the ayes have it. And with that, I believe we are closed. Staff, back to you.
Curtis, if you could move on to the next slide, please. Oh, next slide. There we go. And we'll move on to the next item, which is at 7501 Solano Avenue, the wastewater treatment plant modernization. And that should say plant, not plan. And let me just admit the applicants. All yours, Sandra.
All right. Good evening, ZDRB. Tonight you have before you a town project at the wastewater treatment plant. And that plant is located on Solano Avenue, and it's situated at the end of a long driveway behind the Vintners Golf Course. The golf course on one side, the driving range on the other, and it's not visible from a public vantage point. And the wastewater treatment plant is currently developed with the control building, and that's the building that is before you for discussion tonight. as well as the sedimentation tanks, the filters, the paved parking areas, the underground utilities, and the wastewater treatment ponds themselves, of which there are 2. And we can go to the next slide for an aerial so you can see some of those improvements. The control building was last upgraded in the mid-70s, and it's now in need of modernization to serve the current needs. Next slide, please. The building and its current state features plaster siding, divided light windows, and a hipped roof with clay tiles. And the proposed project is to add an approximately 480 square foot addition to the control room building that includes an expansion of the control room, the addition of a new conference and break room, and a new manager's office. And it's all on the east side of the building that you see in the upper photo of the 2 here. This area abuts the Vintners Golf Course in the immediate vicinity of the maintenance buildings and the parking area. Further afield are the golf course holes, and those are further shielded from view with mature trees. And now a portion of the building will be demolished in order to prepare the site for the addition, and the roof tiles that are removed will be salvaged and reused on the building. The design, let's go to the next slide first. This shows the existing east elevation on the upper right-hand side of the slide. And now next slide, please. This shows the proposed modification, and it's on the lower right side. And for the most part, it's been designed to match the existing building and will feature the same plaster siding. It will utilize the divided light windows, and the salvaged clay tiles will be used on an overhang facing the south and facing the driveway, probably the most visible elevation for visitors to that site. The addition, however, will be distinguished from the remainder of the building in that it will have a flat roof rather than that hipped tile roof. And you can see here there will be no windows on the east elevation, and that's because it's set back just 3 feet from property line. And because of that distance, California Building Code requires fire separation. So we looked at how we should review this project. And improvements of this nature are typically exempt from design review as a minor modification. And that's because of the definition that a minor modification is a minor change to an existing structure that doesn't result in a noticeable change to the front elevation, or changes to the side or rear that would not increase the height or result in privacy impacts on adjoining parcels. And that definitely fits the definition of this project. We were hesitant to give it that exemption because of changes to the public facilities zoning district within which this project sits. That district is currently silent on the design standards for public facilities buildings, but as you all know, we're going through a major update of the zoning and design ordinances, and part of that process, there are new design standards for the public facilities district. And in fact, those are going before the council a week from today for the final reading and adoption. And what they would do is subject public facilities buildings to the master development plan process. And that master development plan process provides that setbacks are determined as part of this period, or as part of that process. And that's similar to the rules that apply to commercial structures. And while those structures identify established front yard setbacks, both side and rear yards are determined as part of the master development plan. And those setbacks can be as low as a 0 lot line. And we see that rather commonly along Washington Street and the downtown core. In this case, it is a proposed 3-foot setback, and we do not expect this to result in any impacts to the adjoining properties, given the very remote location of this wastewater treatment plant and the fact that it backs up to other maintenance buildings and isn't visible from the street. The addition is necessary to upgrade the building to meet the town's needs, and it would otherwise meet California Building Code. And so we feel that it is consistent with the regulations that will be going into effect. And we are have it before you for approval tonight. I do want to share that when we included the standard conditions in the resolution, I did not delete the last one, which should have been. It applied to the last project we spoke of. So we would, if you approve this project tonight, you just strike the last condition as it relates to that clean out. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there, I'm assuming no, but are there any public comments that were submitted on this project?
No, there have not been any comments.
Okay, thank you. I will pass it on to our members for any questions of staff. I'll maintain the same order. So I'll start with Vice Chair Miller. Any questions?
Overall, I think the design is really interesting and improves perhaps the building that's there now. The only question was on that taller portion, the symmetry on those doors. Am I understanding that they're off center or slightly off center? And is there a reason why they weren't centered in that high portion?
Let's see.
On the west elevation.
So the west elevation, those are existing doors. And they're not part of the proposed changes tonight. The changes are limited to the lower flat roof portions.
Okay.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Vice Chair Miller?
No, not at this time.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Member Cook.
Just one. I wondered why the building addition is being done with a flat roof.
Or we can wait to turn it over to the applicant when you're done with staff questions, actually.
Sandra, you were muted at the start of that.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and continue questions for staff, and then we can have that be one of the questions for the applicant when you're ready to hear from them.
Sounds good. Thank you. Member Pena, any questions?
I have no questions.
And passing it to Member Jordan, any questions?
I'm curious, you may have answered this, and I apologize if you have, but are ADA requirements driving this remodel, or is it more just an update and efficiency?
Again, I will leave that to the applicant, but there are ADA improvements that are taking place within this building. So it's a combination of needs.
Okay.
Assuming no further questions from Member Jordan.
No.
Thank you. I just had one clarification, and this might just be my maybe my lack of familiarity with what's pending. Can you shed some light on what is being, just a reminder of what's being put forward to council next week that would otherwise directly affect it? What I took away is that the question was really around the setback, but I wasn't able to connect how some of these pending approvals would factor into what we're being presented with today.
So this project otherwise meets the requirements of the code as to height and massing and FAR. What is unique is that the Public Facilities District didn't have any design standards. And I'm not sure why that was the case, but as part of the zoning ordinance update that implements the general plan, we were able to dive in and establish standards for buildings in this district. And it's just so happens that the timing matches this project moving forward. We may have exempted it at one point. However, we do like to treat town buildings the same as other applicants and put it through the process and not exempt ourselves. So we're really, Michael, simply looking at the setback because that's the only thing that's really triggered here. And the only thing of concern that we cannot say is approved outright, and that it does require decision maker approval.
At what amount of setback would this not be a question? That's the part I'm not really understanding.
Oh, I'm sorry. So side and rear yard setbacks are not, there isn't a minimum standard in the code. It's to be determined as part of this process, which is why it's before you.
I see.
No minimum. And so it could be anything, as low as a 0 lot line even.
Understood. So our choice right now is we either keep this moving forward, and given that it's being approved prior to the new guidelines, it basically becomes the last item. And by the way, the new guidelines may not necessarily render this out of compliance. The alternative would be to wait until the new zoning is determined and then revisit. I'm not necessarily.
No, I wouldn't say that's the case. It is before you tonight as if those new standards are in place, and so they're evaluated under the new standards.
Okay.
Otherwise, we could determine it was fully exempt from design review, and we're taking the extra step to present it to you for your consideration.
Yeah, understood. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you. At this point, there are no other questions for staff. I'll turn to in this case, I guess probably the architect to see if they had any comments they wanted to make, assuming they're here.
So I am not the architect. Actually, I'm John Ferns, the Deputy Public Works Director for the Town of Yountville's Public Works Department, and I am acting as the project agent and applicant for this project. So thank you to the board for considering our application this evening, and thank you to my colleagues in planning. We appreciate the excellent professional job that you do. And as one of your customers, I'm very complimentary. So we always appreciate the opportunity to hold ourselves to the same regulations that we enforce. So that's why we're here. I can answer, if you would like, I can proceed and answer the few questions that I heard.
Please do.
And then go from there. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question I heard is why the flat roof? The answer is twofold. Cost is a big issue with this project in that the project's funded out of our wastewater enterprise. So we're sensitive to the costs associated with any project that's funded out of the wastewater enterprise, as well as the durability of the roof structure. The tile roof was placed in 1977 and it requires maintenance, and the style of roof that's associated with the flat roof doesn't have those same long-term maintenance issues associated with it. So that's what's driving the flat roof decision. However, we are, as Sandra said, we will be saving the tiles and adding them to the front as a tribute to the Spanish tile roof. The second question I heard was, why are we updating this? What's driving it? It's threefold. Number one, it's space. We have more staff working for us now than when this building was built. So the space is very small. It's efficiency to improve their workflow. Additionally, we are doing ADA improvements throughout the building, and we're also doing improvements to accommodate the diverse workforce that we have. And we're adding both gender facilities for locker room and restrooms. So that's what's driving the overall need to add to modernize and increase the size of the building. And that was the two questions that I heard, but I'm available for more.
Okay, I'll thank you for diligently making note of those questions and responding to them proactively, and thank you for that beautiful Klimt painting behind you as a sort of wonderful, colorful backdrop. I'll do the one-on-one questions, starting with Vice Chair Miller to see if he has any question for Mr. Ferns.
Am I muted? No, I
You're
do
good.
not have any questions at this time.
Thank you. Member Cook, any questions?
No, and thank you for answering my question.
Thank you, Member Cook. Member Pena.
No questions here. Thank you.
Member Jordan.
Yeah, thanks for answering my question. It sounds like the improvement is long overdue, and it seems like the idea that the efficiency, cost efficiency for the flat roof is a great idea. No one's going to see the building to speak of, and it's an expense to the town. So I think it all sounds like a very solid plan. Thank you.
Great. And yeah, my only comment to the process is it is interesting that there is an attention to detail being placed on, as Member Jordan put, a building that most people won't see, including salvaging the tile in a nod towards the architectural history of it, as it may be. So with that, close the question period for the applicant and architect, and turn to any commentary from the board amongst ourselves, starting with Vice Chair Miller. Anything you wanted to raise? Or
I would say, I think that it's a sensitive design. I think it is going to be seen by all the people that see it every day. And I also would support that the flat roof and the tile roof is often seen in this type of architecture as combined together. So it feels really cohesive to me, and I applaud a good design.
Thank you. Member Cook, any comments or thoughts?
No, I basically have the same thoughts. I think it's very well thought out. Given the restricted space and the needs that they have, I think it's a good solution.
Great, thank you. Member Pina.
I agree. I follow suit with the comments made before me.
Member Jordan.
Yeah, it seems like a very efficient project, and it's well done, well thought out. Thank you.
Great, thank you. My only just comment is with regards to the setback. I think in the zoning in general, I mean, because we're a small town, we don't really have many of these, and this property is pretty isolated. I mean, it's surrounded by trees, a golf course, a parking lot. So even though there's an element of setback to the property line, I mean, the property line is sitting in a pretty wide open space. So I think it's great that there was the space to expand despite the building itself being so close to the edge. So happy to see that everything worked out. So with that, I will see if anybody would like to make a motion at this time.
I will make a motion to accept the project for design review for the town of Yountville's wastewater treatment plant modernization as presented.
Thank you. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Right, and we will now sequentially go through the voting. Vice Chair Miller.
Aye.
Member Cook.
Aye.
Member Pina.
Aye.
Member Jordan.
Aye.
And I vote aye. And with that, the motion is passed.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, board.
Thanks. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Member Cook. The board, the motions that Member Cook provides are always thorough and the best and set the example. So thank you.
Okay, I'm just admitting the applicant for the next item. Okay. And I believe he has joined us, so we can go ahead with the staff's report. Over to you, Curtis.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. Good evening. Tonight before you is a design review application for exterior modifications to an existing 1,920 square foot home. Modifications of the project include the following elements. First would be a new 365 square foot addition, a new standing seam metal roof with dormers, new doors and windows, and a metal roof for an existing pergola structure at the rear yard. And before we get into the analysis section of the staff report and whatnot, I would like to just show you a few photos of the property. This is the northern elevation of the property along Mulberry Street. Here we have the side and rear yard. and making our way to the deck and outdoor pergola area. Now, the applicant plans to install a 365 square foot addition at the east elevation of the single family residence. The primary goal of this is to simply increase the size, functionality, and livability of the home in its entirety. Let's make our way to the next slide. Here is a proposed rendering of the home showing additional elements of the redesign, such as the standing seam metal roof, black metal windows and black metal doors, and new white paint. I would like to note that the applicant does plan to retain the existing brick, which is currently red. It'll be painted white. At the eastern elevation of the home, as seen on the rendering in the bottom left corner, the applicant does plan to install horizontal wooden siding, painted white to match the rest of the exterior. This is the proposed floor plan. As you can see, the only addition of the home will be the 365 square foot addition. Everything else will be retained. Although the square footage of the property is significantly increasing, the project does meet all floor area ratio requirements, maxed out at 35%, and all other requirements in the municipal code, such as setbacks, are met as well. Here's another image that was attached as a part of your staff report. You can see the diagonal lines showing the addition at the eastern elevation of the property. And this also gives you a better idea of what the dormers of the proposed roof line will look like once the metal roof is installed. And one more peek at the front of the property. This is a pretty straightforward staff report, and that concludes my presentation. The applicant and myself are here to answer any questions that you guys might have.
Okay. Before we proceed with questions for staff, was there any public comment or anything issued from external parties?
No.
We received no.
All right, thank you. All right, let's proceed one by one, as we have been, where members of the board will ask very specific questions of staff. And then once we're done asking questions of staff, then we'll turn and we'll give the applicant a chance to talk about the project. So we'll start with questions for staff, and then we'll turn it over to the applicant, who I can see is here, Mr. Thomas Henthorn.
Hello.
Hello. All right, so we'll start with questions to staff, and then after that, we'll pass it on to you. Starting with Vice Chair Miller, any questions of staff?
No.
All right, no questions. On to Member Cook.
Yes. In the analysis, you stated that there were several elements worth discussion. Are there anything in specific you would like us to talk about or view?
This would be to Curtis.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
nothing specifically. I would like to make note, it looks like a few slides were not on this portion of the PowerPoint. As a part of the agenda packets and staff report that you received, you can see quite a few photos. I think several of them were of the new property along Yountville Crossroads, where you've got that farm style design and metal roof. There's a comparable property also on Staggs View Lane on the western side of Staggs View. Just in regards to the project in its entirety and its design, that's really what the applicant is going for. I'll defer to the applicant to answer any more design questions about the property, but in short, the findings were met and pretty straightforward.
Okay, so when it comes time for the applicant review, we can share that. Any other questions or follow-ups, Kim?
Is there a point in the permitting process where it is appropriate to ask that something that is legal non-conforming be brought into conforming status?
Typically, it's our practice if the applicant were to have contacted staff, and I think this is actually a great example, the slide that I have up on the screen. It says that this rendering is for the house only. It's not taken into account the fence that's shown on this. If the applicant were to have reached out to us saying, can we build this we tear this fence down and then rebuild it in that manner, it's typically our direction that if you knock something out, you cannot reconstruct it in its legal non-conforming manner. I hope that makes sense.
So until that fence falls down?
Correct. Correct. That's why the applicant chose to keep it. And when you are on Mulberry Street, it does provide quite a bit of privacy. Yeah. They are retaining that fence, and there's quite a bit of vegetation and shrubbery that does enclose the front of the property.
And it's not right on the street, so.
No, correct. It's set back.
It's set back a little.
Most definitely.
Yeah. At what point does installing a roof over the patio on the back make it so that we have to count it towards FAR?
If it were to be an attached addition, this is technically detached and there are no exterior walls proposed as a part of the application.
Okay. It looked like in one of the floor plans, since we didn't get a rendering for the back, that although the staff report considers it listed as an outdoor gas fire pit, it actually has a chimney. So is that it's an actual fireplace? Is that need to be addressed in any manner permitting wise?
Height wise, excuse me, I do apologize. The lights in the council chambers have turned off. Hopefully that hasn't.
No, it's fine.
Perfect. Yeah, it meets all the height requirements per the Yountville Municipal Code. It is right at the same height level with the single family dwelling. Mm-hmm. Staff doesn't foresee any issues from the planning phase or the building permit phase as well.
Okay, and last question.
Yep.
Is there an HVAC air conditioning unit, and is it being moved or changed?
Not to my knowledge. I will defer to the applicant to answer any questions about HVAC.
Okay, that is all the questions I have. Thanks, Curtis.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Member Cook, I will continue the sequence of questioning, passing on to Member Pena.
I love it when Kim goes before me because she can ask all the questions I had. No questions.
All right, thank you, Member Pena. Member Jordan?
Purely from a standpoint of aesthetics, I'm wondering, the rendering shows a very stark white modern building. Is the white maybe a little more muted than what our rendering shows here?
This is the only rendering that I've seen myself. I believe it is a little bit more muted, almost like that eggshell color that you do get at that property along the Yountville Crossroad and again at Stagsview Lane. I will defer to the applicant to touch on that as well, though.
Thank you, Member Jordan. Looks like most of the questions at this point are relevant for the applicant. I have no additional questions for staff, so this is perfect time to segue over to the applicant, who is welcome to make any additional commentary before answering any of the questions that were previously asked, or give the board a chance to ask any additional questions.
Hello, this is Thomas Henthorn. So I just wanted to thank you for your time and consideration on this project. We are the proud owners of 1895 Mulberry. We purchased it almost a year ago now, and love being a part of the Yountville community. So, we're excited to proceed with this project. But to answer a few questions, and I also just wanted to reiterate that the fencing that you see on this rendering is not an intended part of the project. We are going to keep the existing trellis, which we love. It's that front courtyard is the reason why we bought the house, and that's where we spend most of our time. So, and with regard to the question on the white, the intention is not to be a stark white. It'll be a softer white, in keeping with some of the other projects in the neighborhood. There's also one that wasn't mentioned. I don't know the exact street name, but one just over on Larkspur that was just painted white, and they also did the metal roof, similar to what we're planning on doing. So our intention is to be in keeping with what's currently going on in the town of Yountville with regards to colors and materials.
All right. Thank you very much. I will we'll go around in the order as we've been keeping it. Easier for me to remember to see if there are any questions specifically of the applicant. We'll start with Vice Chair Miller.
The only question that I had was about the fence, and it seems like it's been addressed. So I think the project looks really beautiful and very rational, thoughtful, and I think it'll be beautiful.
Thank you very much. Member Cook.
My only question was the one about the AC unit, and is that being relocated? Does it have AC?
There is an existing AC unit that we actually just replaced about 2 weeks ago. It is very quiet as a purring kitten. We can barely hear it when we're outside ourselves, and it's located on, I guess it would be the west side of the house. So where you see the two existing, the garage and the existing bedroom next to the garage, it's just behind that existing bedroom.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you. Member Pina, any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Jordan. No questions from Member Jordan?
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm sorry, my internet failed for a minute there.
That's okay. Still with us.
I just wanted to add that I drove the neighborhood after getting these plans, and every element in this house exists already in the neighborhood. So that's nice. There's nothing really here that's unusual. It seems like a very appropriate small addition and revamp of an older home. Thank you. I think you did a really nice job on this.
Great perspective. And yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. I think it's, you know, with a lot of these designs, it's pretty, you know, staff is very careful and consistent and always does their homework to a point where any questions we ask are really just dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So it's exciting, especially with a house that's a bit older, to get this refresh, this modernization, especially, you know, being in a prominent place on the street. So I am excited to see it take shape. So with that, I'll just make sure to follow due process to see if there's any public comment at this time. I'm assuming no, but
we have received no public comment.
Okay. So this closes our Q&A portion, and we'll let's use the rest of the time to go through and share our perspectives as a board, starting in the same order. Vice Chair Miller, any other comments you'd like to share amongst us?
Nope.
Okay. Member Cook.
I would first let me say welcome to Yountville, and you've picked a really beautiful house. That front yard, that front trellis area is gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I think this is a really beautiful and very creative remodel in a kind of area of town lacking a definitive design feature. I think you've done a beautiful job, and I think it will be a very nice addition.
Well, thank you. Can't wait to have you guys over for a glass of wine in the courtyard.
Love to see it. Thank you.
Don't let that influence your vote, just to be clear.
Yes.
The Member Pina, any comment?
I just echo the other members in that I think it's a great design for the neighborhood. I too drove the neighborhood, and it fits perfectly. It's definitely an upgrade, and I think you're going to set the standard for things to come in the future.
Wonderful. Member Jordan.
Yeah, I know. I'm very happy to see this remodel. The neighborhood is a home, you know, group of homes built, I believe, in the 60s by DaVita, and they have great bones. It's a good, solid structure. So it's nice to see this revamp and see the neighborhood get picked up.
And I think you guys have captured it pretty well. So no additional comments from me. And with that, I think we can move to motions. Does anyone want to make a motion to proceed?
I will motion to approve the design as presented. This design for 1895 Mulberry in Yountville.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second that.
All right. Locking your votes in your mind. We'll go through one by one. Vice Chair Miller.
Aye.
Member Cook.
Aye.
Member Pina.
Aye.
Member Jordan.
Aye.
And I will also vote aye. And with that, the motion is approved to proceed. Thank you. Back to you, staff.
All right. Well, that actually concludes all of the public hearing items that are on our agenda today. So if you want, you can move for adjournment.
All right. I will make a motion to adjourn. Is
I'll
there a
second.
second? There
I'll
is a
second.
second. Thank you. There is a second. And we will go through the process again. Member Miller, do you vote to adjourn?
Yes.
Member Cook?
Yes, I do.
Member Pina?
Yes.
Member Jordan?
Yes, thank you.
And I will also vote to adjourn. And with that, the May 12th, first ever remote Zoom teleconferencing coronavirus ZDRB meeting is concluded. Thank you very much.
Hi, Hunter. Or not Hunter, no. Why do I
Thanks,
always call him
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks
All
for
right.
arranging this. Yeah.